Hey, it's Noel Powell from creationeffects.com. I'm excited to show you this new effect. It's a feast for the eyes and ears. It's called Pulse, and it will let you make audio visualizers in Adobe After Effects. It includes 30 visualizers, and each one can be turned into something completely unique using the customization controls. So you can make an endless variety of animations that you can use in lyric videos or music videos or VJ loops, concert backdrops, music-driven reels or shorts, or just anywhere you want to have cool pre-rendered visuals that react to your audio. It also has several audio-driven effects for your footage, which isn't something I've seen done before a lot, but I really like how they turned out. You don't need to know After Effects for this. This tutorial will show you everything you need to know. These effects use a combination of your audio's volume and frequency to drive the visuals, and you'll be able to customize the way that every single property of the design responds to your music. But if you just want something quick, you can stick to the default settings. You just drop in your audio and set a couple volume settings and you're good to render. All right, let's look at how to use Pulse. This is an After Effects template, which is a project file. There are 2 projects included in the download, so start by opening this 2024 project in After Effects 2024 or later. And this one will work for older versions of After Effects, but it's missing one feature. So when you see a control named Displace, it's not going to do anything, and a few of the presets will actually look pretty different because of that. Alright, when you open it up, you'll see some instructions. Smart people read those. And then the first thing you should do is bring in your audio. So I'll go to File and Import and File, and I have this free song I'll use. And then put it in this pre-comp named Put Your Audio Here. And I need to talk about this comp for a while to set you up for success later on. First of all, if you know what frame rate you want your video to be, it's probably a good idea to make this comp match that frame rate. So you can go to the composition settings panel. This is 29.97, but if you are working in 24 frames per second or something, you can change that here. The visualizers react to frequency or volume. For volume, we're going to set that up in this comp. And to get the best reactions to the volume, I recommend you choose music that has a lot of dynamic range. So lots of highs and lows in the waveform. And by the way, the shortcut to see the waveform is to type the L key 2 times fast. So this bumpy part here is going to have more reactive visuals than this part, which is more even. So you could choose music with a good beat, or it could be piano music, anything with variety in the waveform. Sometimes pop songs are so heavily processed, they're just like a straight line because everything is pushed to the maximum level, which don't get me started on that. But there are things we can do to make it more sensitive, and we'll talk about that. But in order for the effects to react to your music at all, we first need to convert this song's volume to values that After Effects can read. And it'll look like this layer here with all these keyframes named audio amplitude. This is just an example layer because if you don't have an audio amplitude layer in here, you're going to get a whole bunch of errors. But because this is in here, you could go straight to the visualizers and preview what they look like, but they won't be reacting to your own music yet. So let's convert our music to keyframes. Just right click it, go to Keyframe Assistant, and convert audio to keyframes. And that'll create a new audio amplitude layer at the top. Now, don't rename it, and don't rename this comp for that matter. It's very important that the names stay the same. And if you're running After Effects in another language, it's going to name this layer something else. And you'll need to rename it to audio amplitude. The name should match this layer, which we can delete now if we want. And if we select this layer and hit the U key, we can see our keyframes and we see the amplitude level for each frame. Okay, just a couple more things to keep in mind about this comp. The effects are only going to pay attention to the first audio amplitude layer, whichever one is highest in the layer order. So you can have multiple songs in here and make an audio amplitude layer for each one, but only the topmost one is going to drive the visuals. If you want to use multiple audio files, what you probably should do is edit them together in this comp and then combine them into one layer by pre-composing them. And then you can convert that pre-comp layer to keyframes. And last of all, just leave your audio on in this comp. Don't mute it or anything. All right, now you're ready to preview the visualizers. I have the same 30 visualizers in both 4K and HD, so just pick a folder. And I categorize them by visual style in these 4 folders here. You can open any comp, or the easiest way to preview a bunch of them is to open this audio visualizer preview comp. It's got all 30 in here, and you can just unhide the one you want to preview. Some may play in real time, others will be slower to preview. Each one is built differently, so the layers will be different and the controls are different in every comp. But there are some common features across all the visualizers that I want to go over, so I'll open Bullseye. It's a slower one, but it's a good example for showing off features.
In my head, I fear that the thoughts build up into...
At the top, there's always going to be an instructions layer, so you can read a summary of how the effect is made. And there will always be some tips or things you can try down here to get different looks. Skipping down to the bottom, we have our pre-comp with our audio layer. And then the blue layers are the main layers with the effects. There could be 1 blue layer or there could be 50. Every preset is different. If you look on the layer, sometimes you'll see hidden effects, and each one is going to create a different look. So you can unhide those if you want to experiment. And then above that, most comps have a layer named Optional Effects. It's an adjustment layer, and you can unhide any of those or any combination of those to create different looks, and you can adjust the settings in the effects. Below that, there's this Afterglow layer. Afterglow is a preset you can download for free at creationeffects.com. I got frustrated with the standard glow effect that comes with After Effects, so I made this. It just provides a much brighter glow with a more realistic fall off. And to customize it, you can use the Afterglow controls on this layer. You'll find this effect in quite a few of the visualizer presets. And then some comps have a camera layer, which means the scene is 3D. So sometimes that means you can use your camera tools here and move the camera or orbit it around to view the design from different angles. In this comp, you can see the camera is parented to the control layer, which is a 3D null object. So you could rotate the control layer in 3D and it will orbit the camera around. All of that kind of stuff will be explained in the instructions layer at the top. And last, the most important layer is the control layer. It has all our customization controls on it. And usually there are 3 groups of controls: base appearance controls, audio response controls, and audio amplitude controls. So let's go through them. The main controls that affect the look of the design are these base appearance controls. This one's got different folders, one for each of the effects that make up the visualizer. So we got settings for the audio spectrum effect, which creates an audio waveform, fractal noise effect for adding texture, CC ball action, that one converts the texture into particles or tiny balls. So it helps to understand how the different effects work together to create this look, but you don't have to understand everything. You can just play with these controls to create something interesting. But what you should understand is that some of these properties change with the music, and that brings us to the audio response controls. So what I've done for each visualizer is I've chosen several properties that I thought would look cool if they shifted in sync with the volume of the music. So for example, if I were to adjust this display shift control, I'd see that this controls how high the particles are pushed upward. I'll undo that. And what it's doing is it's adding a maximum amount of 70 as the audio gets louder. And it's adding it to our base value for the displace property. So up here in our base appearance controls, displace is set to 0. That means the displacement will be at 0 when the audio is completely silent. And you can see if we go to the very last frame where the audio is silent, there's no displacement. The particles are all flat on the ground. But as the audio reaches its maximum value, the displacement will go up to a maximum of 70. And if you want a property to decrease in value as the audio gets louder, you just enter a negative value. So I can make this negative 70, so it subtracts from the base value. So all we're seeing here is the particles being displaced in the opposite direction. So like I said, some of these bass properties are represented down here, and they have the same name, but with this shift label, because they shift the values. But you're not limited to only shifting these properties. You can shift any of these controls up here, or any of the properties in the effects down in the timeline. And you could do it by copying and pasting an expression, and you'll find it in the Getting Started comp, which is up here. And we want the audio response expression on the second layer. I put it on the opacity property, so just expand that and click on the expression, copy the code, and go back to your visualizer. And let's say we like what this blur waveforms control does, and we think, oh, it'd be cool if that fluctuated with the music. So we go down here, and we're just devastated to see that there's no shift control for the blur waveforms property. But no worries, we've got our expression, and maybe we'd like to have the value go down from where it was set at 25, go down to about 0, like that, when the audio is loudest. So we'll set the base value back to 25 where it was, and to add the expression, we'll hold down the Alt or Option key on our keyboard and click the stopwatch icon, and then paste the expression. I put all these instructions in here for you, but all you really need to do is edit this value on the first line, and we can put -25 in there for our shift amount, or maybe give it a little bit extra. We'll do -30. And that'll bring this value from 25 down to 0 as the volume increases. And you can do that with effects too. Like I could add a color balance effect, and I'll put it on this adjustment layer here, so it'll affect all the layers underneath it. And I'll alt click the hue property and paste the expression. Maybe the color should change up to 1 full cycle. So 360, because this value is in degrees. And the color will shift with the music. And just to be thorough here, if you put this expression on a multi-dimensional property like a position, you would just enter the values in brackets, separated by a comma, like this. All right, next on the control layer, we have the audio amplitude controls. By default, our amplitude layer is set to none, which means it's using the volume levels or amplitude levels of our audio back in that put your audio here pre-comp. So that first audio amplitude layer is driving our effects, but if you want, you can make a new audio amplitude layer in this comp. Just bring in the audio, convert to keyframes, and then you can set the audio amp layer to that new layer. The audio input controls here are important. Right now, it's mapping our properties to a minimum volume level of 0 and a maximum level of 50. And when I say volume, I mean amplitude. So when your amplitude of this both channel slider here, when the amplitude's at 0, which is silent, all the properties will be at their base values, which you set up here in the base appearance controls. And when the amplitude reaches 50, any property with a shifting value, so properties in the audio response controls or properties with the expression we just copied, those will increase or decrease by the amount we set. If the volume happens to go above 50, the values will just freeze at their full shifted amounts. So really, a quick and easy way to turn up the intensity of all of those effects that are reacting to your audio is to just decrease the audio input maximum. But here's what I recommend you do, because some of the visualizers are very sensitive to the frequencies and volume of your music, and some are less reactive. Like they're really cool to look at, but it might not be super obvious that they're reacting to the audio, unless there's a lot of big sudden volume changes. So to make your visualizer more reactive, go to your audio amplitude layer and scrub through a section and see what the minimum and maximum amplitudes are. I tried a lot of different kinds of music, and some songs don't go above 35, others go over 70 at parts. So if they're peaking at around 60 to 65, for example, you can go back and set the input maximum to about 60. And keep in mind that any of these controls can be keyframed. So you can keyframe these values to change at different sections of your song. If we go back and look at our waveform, we can see this section is quite a bit louder than the previous section. The dynamics change here. So we can scrub through this section and see that it's getting up to about 70 or 80. So you would keyframe your audio input maximum control to change to 70 at that frame. And then you can go to the quietest section of the waveform, which is probably right here, and you can see what the amplitude is there. And it looks like it only adds keyframes inside the render area, so it didn't do this part. But you would get that amplitude value for a quieter part and then keyframe the audio input minimum to change to that value. I hope that makes sense. One final tip on the input minimum and input maximum. I'll go back to our audio response expression. I don't know how many people will want to do this, but let's say you want to control the inputs for a single property. Like maybe you want a certain property to shift, but you don't want it to start shifting until the amplitude of your audio reaches 30. Well, then after you paste the expression, you can get in there and edit it manually. Down near the bottom, we have range start and range end. And that's our audio input minimum and audio input maximum. So we can just select this part and replace it with our own value. Last on here is the smoothness control. Since volume can fluctuate very quickly in a song, I was noticing that some of the visualizers just looked too shaky and jittery because they were reacting to the volume. So I added this control and it just averages out the volume a little bit. And you can set the amount. Usually 5 to 10 is good. Okay, I'm going to end with a brief overview of the different categories of visualizers. But before I do that, I'll show you a few effects that I use over and over again in this template. I just want you to be familiar with them. I have this solid layer, 50% gray color, and I'll add an audio spectrum effect. And I'll set this to composite on original. And for my audio layer, I'll set it to any layer with audio. And it would be good to try this out yourself and play with the controls because you'll see these all over the template, so it'll help you to know what they do. Like if I scrub through this, not a lot is happening, but I know I can increase the max height and add more frequency bands. I'll increase thickness and softness. The frequency range can be set really high, but as you can see, most of the waveform action is all at the beginning here, from about 20 Hertz to 500 Hertz. So the default settings in the visualizers are usually somewhere in that range, but your audio might be different. So you can always add one of these effects just to see where the waveform is most active in your audio so that you can choose the best frequency range. A lot of visualizers also have a CC ball action effect, which turns the waveforms into 3D particles that you can displace in different ways. It displaces or pushes the pixels based on their brightness. And sometimes I add a fractal noise texture in there to give it some light and dark texture. I'll turn down the opacity, and I could add a camera layer to this and orbit it around to see it at different angles. So a fair amount of the visualizers have a similar kind of setup, but not all. Let's have a look at some of the visualizers. Let's start with these footage options here. There are 5 ways to make your footage react to your audio. First, you need to drag some footage into this, put your footage here pre-comp. I've got a clip here of someone dancing. And just like your audio pre-comp, you should change the frame rate of the comp to match your footage. And these first 2 presets both push parts of your footage out in 3 dimensions in sync with your audio. They're just built differently, so they have different looks. This one you can add more layers to increase the quality of the protrusions. Crystal Dream is a look borrowed from my Trippy Effects package. Glitch has some effects taken from the Glitch Effects package. A lot of the effects in this template were borrowed from other templates and adapted to react to your audio. So each layer here is a different kind of glitch, and you can customize each one, and they're each triggered at a certain volume level. It's all customizable. And then time stutter just messes with the time code to make the footage move with the music. If you want to combine some of these, here's a trick for doing that. If I want to apply like the glitch effects to my time stutter footage, I'll open this glitch comp and select all the layers that have my footage, and there's just this one in this comp. So we can swap this with our time stutter. Just hold down the Alt or Option key and drag it into the comp. Next, in lines and shapes, there's a lot of variety in here. With whatever visualizer you choose, you should see what it looks like with motion blur enabled. It'll be slower, but it'll look smoother. And just spend some time figuring out which one works best with your audio. In the particles folder, most of these use the CC ball action effect to convert a texture or a waveform into particles like we saw earlier. You can get a lot of different looks from these as well. Like you can change the rotation axis and get something really different. In the wisps/trails folder, we have some effects borrowed from the wisp template from Creation Effects. Just different kinds of particle trails, and they move faster and further out as the volume increases. Light streak is a good example of how the audio response expression can be used to sync camera movements with your audio. So the camera gets closer and orbits around as it gets louder. So that's all the important stuff. There's really so much going on in each visualizer. I could do an entire video on each one, but honestly, making 30 tutorials sounds like a terrible nightmare to me. So I'm going to let you just explore and play on your own. Just read those instructions layers if you want to understand it better. Remember to subscribe, have fun with the visualizers, and if you liked this, be sure to check out the other effects at creationeffects.com. The most recent was Blooming Flowers, which is a collection of 3D flowers that you can animate to create floral animations. Also space effects for making all kinds of space animations with the Earth, planets, sun, galaxy, nebulas, black holes, and more. And the mixed media effect is a huge collection of effects for making mixed media animations. And at the very least, go check out the free stuff. You saw a glimpse of Afterglow in this video. There's a bunch of other useful presets like that, which are totally free to download at creationeffects.com.